Chapter 620. On the city wall, Gong Qianxue looked at this scene and revealed a crazy smile. She kept muttering, "I won't lose. How could I lose? My people are many times more than that bitch subordinates. That's right, that bitch will definitely lose miserably. At that time, she will crawl under my feet and be trampled on and slaughtered by me." However, Gong Qianxue didn't know. There is a profession called Shun musician in this world. Why are the people of the Shoshen continent so afraid of the Shun musicians? Because that was truly a heaven-defying existence. Not only could she make herself stronger, but she could also make the people around her stronger. But at the same time, it could infinitely weaken the enemy's advantage on the battlefield. Graceful Feather was activated. The enemies were locked onto one by one. 1, 2, 3, 100, 1,000, 10,000. Muyin's complexion begins to turn pale inch by inch, but her eyes are incomparably bright. Like the most dazzling star in the summer night sky. In this life, her hatred, her resentment, her pain, and her despair would all come to an end today, at this moment. To put an end to it with his own hands. 10,000 Jing Cheng country soldiers were locked on. 20,000 Jing Cheng country corps soldiers were locked on. 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000. Bright red blood oozes from the corner of Muyin's mouth. Little Treasure's hands were clenched into fists as tears welled up in his blue eyes. But he didn't say anything, nor did he move. Because Xiaobao understands his mother better than anyone else. He knew that when his mother showed that kind of expression, it meant that she was determined not to turn back, and wouldn't let anyone change her mind. The intense music slowly became gentle and melodious. And when the sound of the zither finally reduced to a sobbing, almost inaudible sound, Yang Haotian, Yu Yang, and Feng Haitang all stepped forward. They are separately facing the Ink camp, the Tianji camp and the Longevity camp on the east, south, and west. A silk banner had appeared in his hand, and he was waving it in the air. Boom! The appearance of this banner was like a signal, igniting the Nether Flame Army's originally suppressed fighting spirit. On the contrary, it's the army of Jing Cheng country. At this moment, they suddenly felt as if their hands and feet were filled with lead. The Xian Qi in his body seemed to be frozen by the cold, unable to circulate. What was more important was their heart and their will. Just now, they had witnessed Gong Qianxue's brutality and rebellion with their own eyes. This woman is insane, using the innocent people of Jing Cheng country to raise those terrible GU insects. She even killed her own father with her own hands. Was such a woman really worthy of their loyalty? All the soldiers had the thought of retreating and the fatigue of slacking off. Their eyes were drowsy, and they couldn't lift their hands or move their feet. They couldn't wait to fall asleep. Mu Yang's face was deathly pale. Looking at the scene below, she revealed a smile of understanding. This was the reason why she tried every possible way to force Gong Qianxue to reveal her true colors. Although, Graceful Feather was very powerful. However, this was an army of nearly 100,000 soldiers. It was almost impossible to use Feather Grace to lock onto all the enemies at the same time and weaken their strength and willpower. But what if these people had already aroused doubt towards Gong Qianxue and had the intention to rebel? Chapter 621. One side's momentum is like a rainbow, sweeping away all obstacles. The other side is muddle-headed, not advancing but retreating instead. In this way, even if there's a huge disparity in strength, the final outcome is clear at a glance. The war lasted for an entire hour. Finally, the dust settles. The Nether Flame Army lined up in a neat formation, bringing the enemy's heads, pressing down the captives, and wrapping up their spoils of war, returning to their original positions. And what about the entire 100,000 Jing Cheng army? But in this hour, some escaped, some died, and some were captured. In the end, not a single one was left. On the city wall of Litian City, Gong Qianxue's whole body is trembling. Her complexion is even paler than Mu Yang's. Suddenly, Gong Qianxue let out a shrill scream, fleeing down the city wall in panic and embarrassment. Mu Yang coldly watches this scene, and waves her hand, "Attack the city." After a short quarter of an hour, Litian City has completely changed hands. This isn't because the strength of the Nether Flame army has really reached such a level. Rather, at this moment, Gong Qianxue has already lost the hearts of everyone. Almost at the moment when Mu Yang gave the order to attack, the common people of Litian City had already rebelled and opened the city gates. The Nether Flame army marched straight in. Under the guidance of the common people of Litian City, they found Gong Qianxue and her confidant, who wanted to escape from the underground palace. Mu Yang looks at the woman being escorted by the ink camp in front of her, her gaze somewhat complicated. In her memory, Gong Qianxue was always aloof, cold, and arrogant. But now, the woman being forced to kneel in front of her has disheveled hair, ragged clothes, and is in a sorry state like a beggar. Jun Mu Yang, you dare to touch me. I'm the princess of Jingcheng country, a distinguished disciple of the Heavenly Road sect, and the person that Senior Jianfeng admires. No, you don't dare to kill me. If you kill me, all of you will die. Senior Jianfeng will never let you off. Not waiting for her to finish shouting, Guan Hu has already grabbed her hair and slapped her face 4 times in a row. Lousy hit you, let's see what you can do to me. Gong Qianshue's face instantly swells like a pig's head. Her eyes were about to spit fire. They were filled with resentment, but there was also a hint of fear. Mu Yang slowly crouches down, looking at her with an expressionless face. Gong Qianxue, in your entire life, you've schemed and schemed, treating everyone as chess pieces and stepping stones, for what? Just to fulfill your wish of becoming an immortal and ascending to the immortal realm? Gong Qianxue gritted her teeth and said, I am the proud daughter of heaven, the darling of fate. You ants being able to become my stepping stones is your honor. What right do you have to resist me? Mu Yang narrows her eyes. Yes. In her previous life, Gong Qianxue was truly the darling of heaven and earth. After obtaining the sacred beast egg, she refined her most beloved xiaobao into a pill and consumed it. She was favored by Jianfeng and became a disciple of the Heavenly Road sect. She also inherited the imperial power of Jingcheng country. Even the ghost city is under her control. It could be said that most of the Yanwu continent has fallen into her hands. It was her own stupidity and flesh and blood that allowed her to finally refine her body and soul and achieve perfect ascension. However, God gave her a chance to be reborn. This time, her baby is alive and well by her side. She didn't lose any of her relatives or friends. And Gong Qianxue and her positions have been completely swapped. Chapter 622. When Gong Qianxue sees the smile on her face, an inexplicable chill runs up her spine, and her body shudders. Muyan doesn't seem to notice her reaction at all, continuing, there's no such draft in the Yanwu continent, so I gave it a name, Blue Sky Underworld Powder. As for its effects, it's very similar to the White Jade Purple Frost Powder. After taking it, it will deprive you of your cultivation bit by bit, eventually making you return to a mortal who can't even use internal force. Gong Qianshue's eyes widen, revealing a frightened expression. But she hears Muyan continue, but the effects of Blue Sky Underworld Powder are much more interesting than the White Jade Purple Frost Powder. Because White Jade Purple Frost Powder still has an antidote, its effects are also reversible. But Blue Sky Underworld Powder, its effects are irreversible, because it not only deprives you of your cultivation, but also your spiritual root talent. Gong Qianshue's lips tremble, her hoarse voice coming out with difficulty. Jun Muyan, what do you want to do? I don't want to do anything. Muyan slightly tilts her head, revealing a bright and beautiful smile. Didn't you say that you're a proud daughter of heaven, the darling of fate? Then let's see, when your talent disappears bit by bit, even the spiritual root that you'll condense in the future to temper your body and refine your soul, what kind of darling can you become? No. Slut, you can't do this to me. I'm Gong Qianxue. I'm the one who wants to become the #1 ruler of the Yanwu continent. You can't. Before Gong Qianxue could finish screaming in horror and despair, she feels a chill in her mouth. The ice-cold liquid has already rolled down her throat. Gong Qianxue fiercely grabs her throat, desperately trying to spit out the medicine she swallowed. But the moment the medicine enters her stomach, it has already seeped into her internal organs, eroding her blood vessels. Jun Muyan, you slut, you dare to harm me like this. I'll kill you. Gong Qianxue screams, hysterically throwing herself at Muyan. But she's kicked away by Chang Yu, who's guarding Muyan. Chang Yu's expression is very cold. He steps forward, coldly saying, "Miss, the effect of the medicine is too slow. If you want immediate results, it would be better to let this subordinate cripple her hands and feet now." As he spoke, he unsheathed his sword. He walked towards Gong Qianxue step by step. At this moment, Gong Qianxue finally felt the despair and fear of extinction. Her hair was loose, a few strands stuck to her face with tears and snot. Her beautiful face was contorted due to extreme fear, making her look extremely ugly. She shook her head as she retreated backward. But Chang Yu's sword was getting closer and closer to her. Just as Chang Yu's sword is about to chop off her hands, Mu Yang suddenly shouts from behind, "Chang Yu, retreat." Almost at the same time, a terrifying, majestic power came crashing down from the void. Chang Yu's eyes darkened. But before he could make a move, his collar was already grabbed by someone and thrown behind him. A slender and frail figure stood in front of him. A dazzling light burst forth from the young girl's body, slowly forming 7 swords of different colors, surrounding the young girl. The rainbow-colored light shrouded the girl's delicate figure, making her seem even more fragile, making people want to protect her even more. But it was such a frail young girl who had shouldered countless heavy burdens. Chapter 623. Chang Yu's vision is slightly blurred. He wishes he could embrace this slender figure, confine her in his arms, and protect her at all costs. But he can't. "Brother Jian Feng. Brother Jian Feng. You've finally come to save me." Feeling the familiar breath, Gong Qianxue screams in excitement. Almost at the same time, a figure rushes down from the void like lightning, heading towards Gong Qianxue. The pungent smoke, accompanied by a powerful pressure, shrouds everyone around. The lower cultivations of the Nether Flame Army twitch and fall to the ground. Even Yang Haotian and the others have pale faces, their lips purple. It's obvious that they've been poisoned. Mu Yang sneers. The sound of the zither suddenly rings. The fog in the air seems to be swept away by a gust of wind, and is instantly blown away without a trace. Not far away, Jian Feng's figure also appears. Seeing that his unique poison is easily dispelled, Jian Feng's expression changes slightly. But he doesn't have time to think about it. He directly picks up Gong Qianxue and leaves. Mu Yang sneers, "You hurt my people, and you want to leave so easily." As soon as her voice falls, the 7 swords around her have already shot out. With a puff, Jian Feng, who has just leaped into the air with Gong Qianxue, groans and suddenly spits out a mouthful of blood. But just as his figure is about to fall, thick smoke suddenly rises all around him. When the smoke dissipates, Jian Feng and Gong Qianxue's figures have long disappeared. No need to chase. Mu Yang stops Yang Haotian and the others from chasing, and says lightly, "You can't deal with Jian Feng. Even if it's a seriously injured Jian Feng." Just from the confrontation just now, she has already seen that Jian Feng's cultivation is far beyond the peak of the pre-celestial realm. He shouldn't just be a person from the Yanwu continent. "Yes, miss." Yang Haotian and the others bow and say yes, their faces revealing a guilty expression. They are still too weak after all. The miss's internal force is exhausted. Not only can they not help, but they also have to rely on the miss to protect them. Mu Yang knows what they're thinking, and opens her mouth to speak. But suddenly, a huge sense of dizziness surges up. Her eyes go black, and her body softly falls down, losing all consciousness in a split second. "Nyang Qin. Miss. Yang Yang." Han Yi reaches out to support Muyan. However, there was someone who was even faster than him. A moment ago, Chang Yu was clearly standing several meters away. But in that instant, he actually teleports over like lightning and catches Muyan's limp body. Han Yi looks over, bewildered and uncertain. He only feels that Chang Yu's quick movements just now are somewhat abnormal. "Nyang Qin." Xiao Bao rushes to Mu Yang's side, sobbing. Looking at her mother's pale, bloodless face, tears instantly fill her blue eyes. He really wants to take his mother from Chang Yu's hands. Xiao Bao really doesn't like seeing other men hug his mother so intimately. Even if this person was Chang Yu, who had always followed and protected him. But he's too young, too tender. His tiny hands simply can't carry his mother. He can't protect his mother either. Xiao Bao tightly squeezed his mother's ice-cold hand, his heart filled with helplessness and unwillingness. Why wasn't that Lecher here? If he was here, he would definitely protect his mother. Chapter 624. There's no expression on Chang Yu's face, but he doesn't loosen his grip. No need, I can do it. I can protect her. I can give her happiness and safety. Han Yi's face suddenly turns completely gloomy. The surrounding air also stagnates in a split second. Yu Yang and the others look at the way Chang Yu carries Mu Yang, and there's an indescribable sense of incongruity. The way Chang Yu is holding the miss, it's a bit too intimate, too careful and protective. That doesn't look like his protecting a master. Instead, it looks like his guarding his beloved. Yu Yang coughs softly. Chang Yu, let me and Haitang take turns being carried by the miss. Saying that, she reaches out to take Mu Yang from Chang Yu's hands. However, Chang Yu takes a step back. He looks down at the girl's sleeping face in his arms, and on his indifferent and ordinary face, there's a gentle expression. No need, I'll protect the miss. You'd better call the doctor over. Yes, doctor. Dr. Song, quickly come and see the miss. The miss has fainted. Yu Yang and the others seem to wake up from a dream. They no longer care about what's wrong with this atmosphere, and promptly have someone call Dr. Song. But Han Yi suddenly steps forward, unsheathing his long sword, and coldly says, I'll say it again, let go of our madam, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite. Not only does Chang Yu's hand not loosen, it slowly tightens, and he takes a step back. He opens his mouth, wanting to say something. Suddenly, a powerful pressure, as if the sky is falling and the earth is splitting, shrouds him from all directions. Bang! 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 Countless stone pillars in the surroundings shatter, dust flying everywhere. Chang Yu only feels a dull pain in his chest, as if it's about to explode. His whole body seems to be torn to pieces by that powerful force. Before he could react, his arms are already empty. He suddenly looks up. He sees a tall figure standing proudly in the dust. Even if he can't see his face, that disdainful imposing manner is enough to make people want to surrender. And the miss that he's deeply worried about is in that person's arms, tightly imprisoned and possessed. In an instant, Chang Yu feels that it's not only his arms that are empty, but also his heart that's in so much pain that it's almost impossible to breathe. Who are you? Yu Yang and the others still hadn't figured out the situation. Thinking that Jian Feng had returned, she couldn't help but anxiously shout, You dare to hurt our miss, we will definitely tear you into pieces. Several thousand people from the Ink Camp, Heavenly Secret Camp, and Longevity Camp unsheath their swords. They're about to form a sword formation and recklessly rush in to save the people. But just as the three commanders were about to give the order, Xiaobao's clear and cold voice came steadily, You're not allowed to attack. Mother is fine. His blue eyes flickered as he stared at the figure that slowly appeared after the dust settled. Just a moment ago, he was still wondering why this person wasn't here. Why didn't you come back to protect Nyangqin? Then, at this moment, he appeared. When Xiaobao saw his mother in his arms, he felt that if there really was someone who wanted to fight with him over his mother, if there really was someone who wanted to be so intimate with his mother, he would rather it be him. It could only be him. Han Yi's eyes brighten, his voice trembling. He slowly kneels down, Jun Shong, you've finally returned. When the dust has completely settled, the man's devastatingly beautiful and matchlessly handsome countenance is revealed. His indifferent blue eyes sweep over everyone present. He doesn't need to say a single word, just one action, but it makes everyone keep quiet out of fear, wishing that they could crawl at his feet. Chapter 625. Yu Yang and the others finally come back to their senses, and they rub their eyes, shouting excitedly, Son-in-law, you're finally back. As soon as the words come out, she realizes that she was too excited, and actually called out the name she uses in private. She promptly says in fear and trepidation, Jun Shong, this subordinate made a mistake, please don't. Before she can finish speaking, Di Mingju already interrupts, don't change it, very good. Yu Yang receives Di Mingju's stern and proud, but also praising gaze, and for a moment, she is overwhelmed by favor. After a long while, she reacts. Di Mingju's very good refers to the title of son-in-law. She immediately smiles from ear to ear. But the rest of the Dark Flame army look at each other in dismay, secretly engraving the title of son-in-law in their hearts. As for whether Miss will be angry or not, of course she won't. Didn't you see that Miss even changed Ghost Wind Valley to Dark Flame Valley? The new son-in-law is called Di Mingju, and Miss is called Jun Muyan, each taking a word to form a valley. Isn't this a clear indication of Miss's feelings for son-in-law? Muyan would never have thought that she would just sleep for a while, and when she wakes up, she would already be directly sent out by her subordinates. Di Mingju holds Muyan, slowly walking in front of Chang Yu. In a split second, the originally relaxed atmosphere because of Yu Yang's son-in-law once again congeals into ice. Guan Hu and everyone from the Ink camp are nervous, stiff all over. They fear that Di Mingju will make a move, and Chang Yu's head will be separated from his body. Muyan is Ben Jun's wife. Di Mingju coldly says in a calm voice, if anyone dares to covet Muyan, Ben Jun will make them regret coming to this world. You should be glad that you are Muyan's subordinate, otherwise no matter who you are, you would already be living a life worse than death. Chang Yu clenches his teeth, his whole body is trembling, and his face is even more pale. Guan Hu desperately pulls on his sleeves, not letting him speak. But Chang Yu raises his head a little, looking at Di Mingju. Miss has never admitted that she is your wife, just as Chang Yu finishes speaking. The girl in Di Mingju's arms cries out, slowly opening her eyes. But her eyes are still blurred, as if she can't tell what day it is. Her absent-minded gaze falls on Di Mingju's face, and she softly murmurs, Di Mingju. Di Mingju's entire body's murderous aura abruptly withdraws completely. His cold eyes flashed with a gentleness that even he himself did not notice. It's me. You're finally back. Yes, I'm back. Mu Yang absent-mindedly smiles for a bit. She gently rubs against his chest, and then murmurs, Di Mingju, I was so afraid that you wouldn't come back. It's great that you're back. Her voice becomes softer little by little, until it dissipates in Di Mingju's arms. Di Mingju's hands couldn't help but abruptly tighten, and he tightens his hold on the girl, shackling her in his arms. Chang Yu looked at this scene in a daze, only to feel as if there was a bunch of huge thorns in his chest, tearing at his heart. At this moment, he finally understood. His words just now were ridiculously wrong. Not only did Di Mingshan have a crush on Miss Mu, but Miss Mu also had this man in her heart, and only this man. And what does he count as? Chang Yu reveals a bitter smile, slowly taking a step back. He kneels down on the ground and says in a hoarse voice, this subordinate swears to follow Miss and Little Master to death, and will never have the slightest bit of wishful thinking. Chapter 626. Turning around, he picks up Xiao Bao with one hand, puts him on his shoulder, and turns to leave. Watching the backs of the three people as they leave, everyone in the Nether Flame army is envious. This is such a beautiful scene. A talented man and a beautiful woman, a match made in heaven. Jun Shong is so handsome and powerful, and the Miss is so incomparably beautiful. Even the little Gongzi is adorable like snow jade that everyone loves. At this moment, many people are convinced that Xiao Bao is Di Mingju's son. Otherwise, they simply can't imagine what kind of outstanding man is worthy of their Miss, worthy to be the father of their little master. Chang Yu slowly stands up from the ground, watching this scene. The pain and loneliness in his eyes are deeply hidden. Suddenly, a hand pats his shoulder. Chang Yu hears Guan Hu's rough voice in his ear, Boss, don't blame this brother for not reminding you. There are some thoughts that you shouldn't have, you should put them away as soon as possible. Miss, you can't have such thoughts. Although he and Chang Yu are now leaders, Guan Hu has always regarded Chang Yu as the boss. When the Ink camp was just established, it was also Chang Yu who was the first to obey Mu Yang, and pointed out the bright path for them. Because they were willing to follow the Miss, to be loyal to the Little Master, they have today. Therefore, many people in the Ink camp respect Chang Yu as a deputy commander second only to Yang Haotian. But among everyone, Only the seemingly careless Guan who can see through Chang Yu's thoughts. He has always been worried about Chang Yu's misplaced infatuation. Chang Yu turns to look at him, the corners of his mouth pull up, revealing a wry smile. In the end, he doesn't say anything and turns to leave. Guan Hu frowns slightly, watching the man's lonely back as he leaves. He lets out a long sigh. Mu Yang feels that she's having a long dream. In the dream, the sound of the Tianmo Qin echoes in her ears. There are also earth-shaking battle cries, screams, and roars. The Shun musicians are possessed by demons. Everyone has the right to punish them. Kill all of them. The Shun musicians, heal the sick and save people, have never harmed a wronged life, and have never done anything that goes against reason and nature. But you, just for the sake of power and selfishness, want to slaughter my Shun musicians. In the end, who is the demon? Bailey Yinlu, as long as you hand over the Shun musician inheritance, my Tianyi men might even give you an intact corpse. I curse you. The Polar Domain, the Heaven Physician sect, the Yin-Yang sect. I curse everyone in the Shoshen continent to die a horrible death. One day, my Shun musician successor will return to the Shoshen continent. When that time comes, she will definitely wash this continent with blood, so that you will never be able to reincarnate. One day, the revenge of my Shun musician sect will come. Just you wait, just you wait, just you wait. Mu Yang suddenly opens her eyes, her heart beating violently. In her dream, the Shun musician sect and Bailey Yinlu's mournful cries before their deaths, filled with hatred and hatred as deep as a sea of blood, seemed to fill her heart, making it almost impossible for her to breathe. What had happened 1,000 years ago? Why did the Shun musicians become the target of the entire Shoshen continent's pursuit? Furthermore, she seemed to have heard. Polar Domain. Mu Yang takes a deep breath, suppressing the churning emotions in her heart. Chapter 627. Once her line of sight is fixed, Mu Yan's breathing, which had just recovered, suddenly stagnates once again. A handsome face comes into view without any hindrance, making her heartbeat completely disorderly. Di Mingju, who usually opens his eyes, has a pair of deep, dark, ice-blue eyes. From top to bottom, there's a lofty and aloof coldness. Just like an emperor who rules over the world, making people unconsciously want to kneel down at his feet. But the man who's sleeping right now, the light falls on his fair face, reflecting the sharp angles of his face. Under the sword-like eyebrows, there are thick, long, and slightly curled eyelashes. The long eyelashes gently droop, covering those ice-cold eyes, making his entire temperament soften. Under the handsome bridge of his nose, there's a pair of thin lips. The line of his lips is taut, carrying a trace of solemnity. But sleeping peacefully like this, it inexplicably gives people a kind of childlike cuteness. Mu Yan's vision is somewhat blurred. When she was unconscious, she vaguely saw Di Mingju's face. At that time, she thought that it was her own dream. But she didn't expect that it would actually be true. This man, he really came back. Her hand uncontrollably reaches out, gently caressing the man's eyebrows, as if to confirm that he really exists. Her fingertips lightly touch those ink-black eyebrows, the tightly closed eyes, and the thin, lightly pursed lips. Her fingers touch the man's lips in the air, and quietly stop. She inexplicably wants to touch it, to see if it's the warm touch in her memory. Suddenly, Mu Yan seems to realize what she's doing, and her face reddens. Just as she's about to take her hand back, her wrist is suddenly covered with a warm touch. Her wrist tightens, and her whole body is pulled over, falling into the man's embrace. A familiar coolness hits her in the face, accompanied by the man's unique scent, making Mu Yan's flushed cheeks even redder. Let go. When she opens her mouth, she realizes how flustered her voice is. Di Mingju, what are you doing? The man bends down slightly, his hot breath at her ear. Shouldn't Ben Jun be asking you this? Yang, what do you want to do while I'm sleeping? Mu Yan didn't expect that she would be caught red-handed. She felt extremely guilty and could only put on a strong front. Don't talk nonsense, I didn't. Di Mingju looks at her blushing little face. The anger he felt when he saw Chang Yu hugging her disappeared without a trace at this moment. He firmly clasps Mu Yan's slender wrist and presses it against his chest. Yang, why do you have to be so sneaky? Where else do you want to touch? Your husband will let you touch as you please. Shut up. Mu Yang finally flew into a rage out of humiliation and jumped up. Who said I wanted to touch you? I just wanted to slap you awake. However, before Mu Yang could even jump off the bed, he was already pulled back by a strong force. For a moment, the world spins, and Mu Yan's hands are pressed on top of her head. The man's tall figure enveloped her completely. Di Mingju's pillously handsome face is within reach, his serene blue eyes are filled with her reflection. Yang Yang, long time no see. Did you miss me even for a moment? As he spoke, the man's warm breath blew on his face, causing Mu Yang's skin to feel numb and itchy, as if there was a layer of goosebumps. Chapter 628. The man's voice is so dark and husky, like a bewitching whisper. But like a brand, it's engraved into the depths of her soul, leaving her nowhere to escape. So, when Di Mingju slowly leans over, getting closer and closer to her lips, Mu Yan completely forgets to resist. She even sinks into that kind of blazing chaos of passion. She unconsciously sticks out her tongue and licks her somewhat dry lips. Such a small action is like a fuse, suddenly igniting Di Mingju's painstakingly suppressed passion. His eyes are frighteningly hot, like a beast that has been starving for a long time, itching to devour its prey into its belly. His sexy Adam's apple bobs up and down. Di Mingju leans over, about to kiss those cherry blossom soft lips. However, at this moment a small palm covers Di Mingju's face. Then, a crisp and angry little voice reaches their ears. Lecher, you're not allowed to bully Enchantress. The two turn their heads at the same time, and what they see is a small, expressionless Xiao Bao sitting on the bed, glaring angrily at Di Mingju. Jun Shong's face immediately darkens. Anyone's mood would explode if they're interrupted in the middle of a good occasion. The low pressure around him is as thick as an approaching storm. Unfortunately, Xiao Bao simply ignores him. Instead, he pushes him away with a small hand, and pounces into Mu Yan's arms. Enchantress. Xiao Bao's voice is filled with grievance. Enchantress is Xiao Bao. Enchantress can't ignore Xiao Bao. You can't not see Xiao Bao. In fact, when Mu Yan woke up, Xiao Bao and Di Mingju were sleeping on her left and right. It's just that when she opened her eyes, she saw Di Mingju. For a moment, she didn't notice Xiao Bao's existence. At this time, she hears her baby complaining in a voice filled with grievance, acting like a spoiled child. What Di Mingju, what charming and gentle feelings, she immediately throws them all to the back of her mind. She holds Xiao Bao in her arms, and kisses him on his tender cheeks. Good baby, Enchantress loves Xiao Bao the most. Hearing Nephrite's kind words, Xiao Bao's complexion softens. Blushing, he also softly kisses Mu Yan's face. Soon after, he hugs Mu Yan's neck and rubs it while turning his head to look at Di Mingju, revealing a provocative and flaunting expression. Di Mingju faintly looks at him, then hooks up the corners of his lips, revealing a meaningful smile. Jun Morchen, long time no see, how's your training progress? After saying that, without waiting for Xiao Bao and Mu Yang to object, he directly lifted him by the collar and carried him out of the room. Let this lord see if you have retreated. Although Xiao Bao is reluctant to part with his mother's embrace, he thinks that he can become stronger under Di Mingju's training, so he obediently doesn't resist. After a day of training, even with Xiao Bao's extraordinary talent, he was so tired that he almost collapsed. When night fell, he slept like a piglet, completely unconscious. In order for him to better heal his body, Mu Yang directly placed him next to the spiritual vein in the space. As for Di Mingju, without Xiao Bao's interference, he naturally has his wish fulfilled, holding Mu Yan to sleep. Shadow Demon. Han Yi sees the cold youngster standing in the cold dew, and rushes over like a gust of wind. You're back too. Chapter 629. If he had a tail behind him, he's afraid that he wouldn't be able to stop himself from wagging at this time. Yingmai sees his silly appearance, and can't help but burst out laughing. But very quickly, her smile converges. Jun Shong is injured, I naturally have to follow and protect him. Originally, Star Wolf, and the others also wanted to follow, but Jun Shong stopped them. Han Yi's complexion changes. Jun Shong is really injured. How is the injury? How did you get injured? Yingmai tells him about Di Mingju breaking into Tianyi men alone, and how he killed Liu Se. Hanyi is simply dumbstruck as he listens. After a long while, he mutters, truly worthy of being our Jun Shong. With only 10% of his power, he actually turned Tianyi men upside down. He, that old witch Lung Yuexia, she must be furious right now. As he speaks, they see a tall figure treading on the moonlight. Han Yi and Ying Mai promptly kneel down, greetings to Jun Shong. Jun Shong, you still haven't recovered from your injury? Why did you come to the Yanwu continent? Han Yi anxiously says, the injury you received last time when you killed the Snowfield mythological beast still hasn't completely healed. This time, you've been injured again. If you don't treat it properly, I'm afraid that it will cause irreversible damage to you. It would be better for you to return to the polar domain to recuperate. Ying Mai and I will properly guard Miss Jun's place, there won't be any trouble. Han Yi hasn't finished speaking when he suddenly feels his whole body go cold, as if he's in a 10,000-year-old icehouse. He shakily raises his head, meeting God's cold eyes. In a split second, his body goes limp, and he almost falls to the ground. Almost in an instant, his mind recalls the scene of Miss Jun being held in Chang Yu's arms. The key point is that Jun Shong is also watching this scene. Han Yi only feels his vision darken, wishing he could faint at once. Jun Shong, this subordinate was wrong. He says with a sullen face, this subordinate is willing to go to the purgatory pool for 3 months. Di Mingju expressionlessly says, adding the accumulated time from before, how much time is that? Come out after you've finished. Don't Han Yi screams, pitifully looking at Di Mingju. He didn't know how many years he had spent in the purgatory pool. If he came out after his time was up, wouldn't he not be able to see Ying Mai for several years? Moreover, he would have to suffer in the purgatory pool every day? Woo, Jun Shong, how could you be so cruel? Di Mingju says unhurriedly, you want to add another month? Han Yi doesn't dare to say a word, and can only ask Ying Mai for help. However, Ying Mai replied with a smile, don't worry, I will protect Miss Jun well. In a split second, Han Yi's face becomes devoid of love. Are there still any companions to love? Hello, Master. Hello, little senior brother. Master, are you looking for me? Seeing Liu Beiyu standing before her, Muyan can't come back to her senses for a long time. Ever since the great change in Jin Wangfu, Liu Beiyu seems to have grown up overnight. During this time, he's been training with the Ink Camp. Starting from the most common soldier in the Ink Camp, he didn't complain to Muyan or Xiao Bao, nor did he cower in the slightest. After not seeing him for a few months, the fair-skinned youth seemed to have lost all of his immaturity. His whole body has become a circle darker, and is also a circle more robust. His stature has also become slimmer. He looks like a truly mature and responsible man, not the unreliable little prince who only knows how to flirt. Chapter 630. A lot of things have happened during this time. I haven't had time to treat your big brother's illness. Now I'm free. Master, you don't have to do it. Liu Beiyu smiles and says, big brother's illness, I've already told Dr. Song and Sister Haitang of the Immortal Camp about it. With Master's diagnosis and prescription, Dr. Song and the others have already prepared the medicine to treat my big brother. I was just about to ask you to let Sister Haitang accompany me to Kaiyang country to treat my big brother's illness. Muyan stares blankly, somewhat unable to come back to her senses. The Everlasting Camp was established after the Ink Camp and the Tianji Camp. Apart from the Grand Void Camp commanded by Bai Ichen, the Everlasting Camp can be said to be the weakest. Even in the future, the speed of development will not be as fast as the Grand Void Camp. Because the Grand Void Camp and the Ink Camp are in charge of fighting, and the Tianji Camp is in charge of intelligence. The Everlasting Camp is in charge of support and logistics. What it needs the most are doctors, pharmacists, alchemists, and draft planting masters, these special professions. But the training of these talents is often the most difficult. Nowadays, in the Everlasting Camp, apart from Feng Haitang and Chen Qingfeng who have received her personal guidance, the others can't even be considered as apprentices in this regard. As for old Dao, He is mainly responsible for the external trading of various medicines of the everlasting camp. What makes Muyan rejoice is that the Battle of Litian City is over, even though Gong Chenshua ran away. But all the soldiers under her command have surrendered. Even many people of Litian City and Lotus Town have followed Muyan back to Hellfire Valley, settling down in the valley. And Dr. Song and the others, in order to thank Muyan for saving their lives, have all given up the industry that they have been operating for decades. They choose to rely on Muyan. In this way, whether it's the newly established Grand Void Camp or the Everlasting Camp that is short of manpower, they have all been greatly replenished. Of course, the more people there are in Hellfire Valley, the more rations they need. Not to mention that she's throwing money without regard for her life, building the Hellfire Army towards the direction of the #1 army in the Yenwu continent. The money that Muyan has plundered from the Ghost City and Jingcheng country is already stretched thin. She is pondering whether to refine elixirs and let the Ghost City sell them first, or to treat Liu Beiyu's big brother. Unexpectedly, Liu Beiyu actually proposed to let Feng Haitang help with the treatment. Liu Beiyu's eyes are tightly fixed on Muyan, his eyes brimming with admiration and gratitude. "Master, you've just suffered such a serious injury some time ago, and you've even lost consciousness due to exhaustion. The disciples and the Hellfire Army don't want you to work anymore." Jun finally came back with great difficulty. "Master, Master, and Master, Master. I believe Grand Master doesn't want you to suffer anymore." Muyan's face reddens and she secretly spits. "Shut up, who are you calling Master Gong? Alright, since you've already decided, then pick a day to depart. However, make sure to bring more medicine and manpower. Be careful. Lu of to say, Lu of Lu of two. Lu T 2222222. Have you decided to go to Kai Yang country in person? You two of you to go to T to B to of AA to of long two of him. Two of 222. 2 of 2. Chapter 631. Miss, I'm also a human, a woman who yearns for the man she loves to protect her. My heart also hurts, and I also get tired. Perhaps, he doesn't want to see me at all. He doesn't want to be with me all the time. If I stay here, I'll just be torturing each other. I might as well leave for a while. Perhaps both of us can make the best choice. Mu Yang sighs softly. Since you've already decided, I will naturally support you. However, even if he went out, he couldn't leave for too long. Come back early. The gates of the Netherflame Valley are always open for you. Feng Haitang's eyes reddened. She kneels on one knee and presses one hand on her left chest, bowing deeply to Mu Yang. Miss, for Haitang, even if there is no Hao Tian here, this is already my home. You, little master, and the people of the Netherflame army are all Haitang's family. Apart from here, where else can Haitang go? I will definitely come back. Yang Haotian only discovered that Feng Haitang's figure had disappeared from the entire Netherflame Valley a few days later. He asked the people of the Longevity Camp, but they did not know where Feng Haitang had gone. She only knew that she went out with Dr. Song and did something for Miss. But if it was just for business, why was there no news from him for 7 days? Yang Haotian was burning with anxiety. Terrible thoughts kept circling around in his mind, causing his mind to go blank. Finally, he couldn't help but walk into Mu Yang's bedroom. When he entered, Yu Yang happened to be there too. Before Yang Haotian could speak, he heard Yu Yang say anxiously, "Miss, the people of the Tianji Battalion have been monitoring the Kai Yang country, but a few days ago, they suddenly lost contact with Haitang and Dr. Song. Even the Kai Yang Imperial Palace is completely closed. We don't know what happened inside." When Yang Haotian heard this, he couldn't hold it in any longer. He opened his mouth and let out a hoarse roar. Mu Yang looks at him, only to see that the usually calm and indifferent man's face is now filled with anxiety. His eyes were red with anxiety, like a wild beast that wanted to fight to the death. Mu Yan slightly knits her brows. Haitang and Dr. Song were under my orders to treat Big Brother Liu Beiyu. According to my judgment, Big Brother Liu Beiyu's illness is due to being poisoned. I'm afraid something has happened in the Crimson Flame Imperial Palace. Therefore, Haitang also brought some people over. Logically speaking, it should be foolproof, but I didn't expect to suddenly lose contact with them. Even the Heavenly Secret Battalion couldn't find anything. Haitang might really have met with some mishap. Ah. Yang Haotian opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he could only make a hoarse and unpleasant sound. He reached out his hand to draw, but found that his hand was trembling. For a moment, he was unable to use sign language to express his meaning smoothly. Muyan coughs lightly, as if she didn't see his abnormality. She continues, "We naturally can't ignore the life and death of Haitang and Dr. Song, so we must immediately dispatch troops to Kaiyang country. But this trip is very dangerous, I don't know who." Before she could finish her sentence, Yang Haotian suddenly let out an indistinct roar, "Oh, I go." His tongue had been cut off, so he could not speak smoothly. But at this time, he was panicking and worried to the extreme. He actually forced himself to say, "I'll go." Even Yu Yang was slightly moved, but then she gently shook her head. Chapter 632. Yang Haotian nodded heavily, and the eagerness in his eyes seemed to be overflowing. "I can allow you to bring a team of people from the ink camp there, but you have to guarantee that you'll bring Feng Haitang back in good condition. Moreover, you have to make sure that she comes back willingly." At this time, Yang Haotian's heart is only filled with Feng Haitang's safety. He simply can't understand the meaning behind Muyan's words. Once again, he nodded heavily and made a few random gestures. After Mu Yang nodded in agreement, he instantly rushed out like a gust of wind. When only Mu Yang and Yu Yang were left in the hall, Yu Yang clicked her tongue and sighed, "Men, sometimes they are really stupid. They're clearly in love with each other, but I don't know what Yang Haotian's blockhead is thinking. TSK, I can't understand why a beauty like little sister Haitang would fall for that blockhead, Yang Haotian." Mu Yang smiles faintly. Yang Haotian is just too self-abased, afraid that he is not worthy of Haitang, afraid that Haitang will miss out on a better one. Yu Yang disapprovingly shook her head, but that blockhead never thought about what little sister Haitang really wants. If you continue to hesitate and retreat, when the real disaster comes and you want to turn around and grab that person's hand, you will find that it is already too late. At that time, you will be truly regretful and heartbroken. Mu Yang was stunned for a long time. She did not come back to her senses. She did not even notice when Yu Yang had left. When Mu Yang comes back to her senses, she finds herself standing in front of Di Mingju's door. She was stunned for a moment, not understanding why she was here. It was as if the uneasiness in her heart had driven her to investigate. During this time, Di Mingju was always by her side, and there seemed to be no change. But every day, there would always be a long period of time when not even his shadow could be seen. Every time he asked Yingmai would always say that Zhun Shong's clone had returned to the Shoshen continent and had some matters to deal with. Yingmai even openly opens the door, letting her see Di Mingju's sleeping body. Di Mingju's identity isn't simple, it's very normal for him to have matters to deal with. Muyan doesn't know why, but she always feels uneasy, especially after hearing Yu Yang's words. Is it because of this fear and uneasiness that she unconsciously walked to the door of Di Mingju's room? She was about to push the door open to see if Di Mingju had returned to the Shoshen continent. However, Yingmai's somewhat anxious voice suddenly came from the room, "Zhun Shong, your injuries can't be dragged on any longer. Why don't we let Miss Zhun take a look? Although she doesn't have any divine power, her medical skills are superb. She might be able to heal your injuries. Or, why don't you directly return to the polar domain and let your main body recuperate in a place rich in divine power?" Immediately, Di Mingju's cold voice interrupts Yingmai's words, "There's no need to say any more, Ben Zhun will not leave Mu Yang, and I don't want her to worry." Muyan finally couldn't bear it any longer and fiercely pushes the door open. She glared fiercely at the man in front of her, who was half naked and had bandages wrapped around his waist and abdomen. Her eyes were a little red. The voice that comes out of her mouth carries a hoarse tremble that even she herself doesn't notice. "Di Mingju, is this your way of not letting me worry? You idiot." Chapter 633. Startled, Di Mingju raises his head, seemingly very surprised by her appearance. After a long while, His expression softens, and he says in a low voice, "Yang Yang, why did you come here?" Muyan fiercely glares at him, and quickly walks to his side. She pushes aside the hand he's trying to cover, and goes to look at the injury on his abdomen. Her voice is filled with resentment. "If I hadn't discovered it by accident, how long were you going to hide it from me?" Mingju's voice unconsciously softens. "It's just a small injury, it's not a big deal." But how can Muyan believe him? She rips off his clothes at once, and carefully examines the injury on his abdomen. Yingmai's brows are smiling, but she promptly hangs her head down to restrain herself. She quietly withdraws and closes the door. The two people in the room act as if there's no one else around, simply not noticing her departure. After closing the door, Yingmai reveals a somewhat sorrowful expression. She never knew that her aloof, callous, and heartless Jun Shong actually has such a black-bellied side. Jun Shong's injury is indeed very serious, but after this period of rest, it's more or less healed. Especially today, the bruises in his body have already been completely cleaned up. Although his body is still a little weak, it's not a serious hindrance. And the wound on his abdomen was cut by himself when he was cleaning up the bruises and poisonous gas in his body. With Jun Shong's cultivation, wanting to heal is just a matter of a blink. However, a few days ago, when he was seriously injured, Jun Shong refused to show it in the slightest. Now that the injury is clearly healed, but when he sensed Miss Jun approaching, he deliberately made Miss Jun misunderstand that he was seriously injured. She thinks of Miss Jun's unconcealable anxiety and worry. Yingmai couldn't help but sigh, then she shows a shallow smile. It seems that it's only a matter of time before Miss Jun becomes the mistress of the polar domain. Because Jun Shong would never allow a woman that he fancies to escape the web of love that he weaves. Inside the room, Muyan pulls off Mingju's clothes, revealing his well-defined and well-built chest. Smooth lines spread down, eventually disappearing under the wrapped gauze. But Muyan doesn't notice this spring scenery at all. Right now, her eyes are only filled with the faintly discernible color of blood under the gauze. Her small hand presses on the gauze, wanting to untie it, but it's caught by Mingju. The man's hoarse voice rings in her ear, "Yang Yang, if you continue to be so enthusiastic, Ben Jun won't be able to hold back." As soon as Muyan raises her head, she comes face to face with the man's blazing eyes. That gaze seemed to want to swallow her whole. Her heart is beating fiercely in her chest, and Muyan only feels that her whole body is a little bit hot, as if it's going to burn. She could not help but lick her lips. The flame in Mingju's eyes suddenly flares up, he can no longer suppress it. However, before he could move, his clothes were suddenly grabbed by a small hand. His body was forced to lean forward. The girl's beautiful face was right in front of him, and her fragrance filled the tip of his nose. Soon after, before Mingju could react, soft lips press against his lightly pursed thin lips. The sweet fragrance bloomed like fireworks. Mingju's entire body suddenly stiffens, his eyes widening. For a moment, he can't react to what just happened. Muyan kissed him? This is the first time his Yang Yang has taken the initiative to kiss him? Was he dreaming? Or did it really happen? Chapter 634. Then, he saw the girl opposite him blushing and saying, "Don't mess around. Be good and don't move. Let me see your injuries." Then, our Lord Monarch, who dominated the three realms, looked down on the world, whose name struck fear into the hearts of all who dared not disobey him, obediently sat upright, allowing the slender, soft, and fair hand to slowly remove the bandage around his waist, revealing the bloody wound. The moment he saw the gaping wound, Mu Yang felt his heart suddenly twitch, as if something was gripping it tightly. It was a knife wound that almost cut open his chest and abdomen. As long as it went a little deeper, it might be able to directly cut open his dantian. Just by looking at it, she felt a bone-piercing pain. However, the man in front of her said that it was just a small injury and was unwilling to let her know and treat it. Mingju looks at her absent-minded and pained expression, his heart is both sweet and distressed. He pulls her into his arms and nibbles on her lips. "Jun Muyan, you still dare to say that you don't have me in your heart? Is it so hard to admit that you like me too?" This man. At a time like this, he was still fussing over this. Mu Yan fiercely glares at him, but at this time, the corners of her eyes are slightly red. Not only is there no fierceness, but there's also a bit of delicacy and charm, making Di Mingju's eyes become even more serene. He pressed the back of the girl's neck with one hand and pressed her against him. His scorching lips pressed against hers. You're wound, Mu Yan wants to struggle, but all of a sudden, all of her voice is swallowed up. Her hands, which were trying to push him away, were also locked in the man's large palm, and she was unable to struggle. The scorching kiss engulfed every inch of her breath and senses. It was overbearing and predatory, as if it wanted to swallow her up completely. Mu Yang's mind gradually became a blur. All she could feel was the man's boiling temperature, and the tip of her nose was filled with the man's familiar breath that made people's blood boil. She vaguely knew that she had already sunk into a man's love and passion, and could no longer extricate herself. Just then, his fingertips touched a sticky liquid. Mu Yang abruptly sobers up from her confused state of mind, and pushes Di Mingju away. When she looked down, she saw the bloody wound on the man's abdomen and the bedsheet that was stained red. A pair of peach blossom eyes are thoroughly red, like a raging fire is burning. Di Mingju, you obediently lie down for me. If you dare to move again, I'll castrate you. Jun Shongdaran, who still hasn't had enough, licks his sweet and fragrant lips, feeling somewhat depressed and regretful. Was he lifting a rock only to smash his own feet? How did you get injured? Mu Yang carefully takes out the elixir refined from the cloud birth and sea binding, crushes it into powder, and sprinkles it on the wound. Di Mingju's physique is special. Ordinary drafts don't contain spiritual energy, so they have no effect on him. Only the pills refined from the cloud birth and sea formation skill would have some effect. When the powder fell on the wound, it was visible to the naked eye, making a sizzling sound. Mu Yang feels pain just by looking at it, but Di Mingju doesn't seem to feel anything. Other than his slightly pale face, there was no change in his expression. He just stared at her unblinkingly. When he heard Mu Yang's question, he raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a slight smile that was almost imperceptible. Someone hurt my fiancée, how could I let her off so easily? Chapter 635. However, was it really that simple? She didn't think so. The words that Liu Se said before her death, as well as the Tianyi men that she mentioned, seemed to have once had a deep relationship with the Shun musicians. Or rather, it should be called a deep hatred. Di Mingju didn't hesitate to get seriously injured to go back to the Shoshan continent to kill Liu Se. Is it really just because of a personal grudge? Or does he already know my identity as a Shun musician? In Mu Yang's mind, she unexpectedly recalls the voice she heard in her dream. I curse you. Polar domain, Tianyi men. I curse all of you in the Shoshan continent to die a horrible death. One day, my Shun musician successor will return to the Shoshan continent. When that time comes, she will wash this continent with blood, making it so that you will never be able to reincarnate. Polar domain, is it the polar domain that Han Yi and the others spoke of? 1,000 years ago, it wasn't only Tianyi men who had enmity with the Shun musicians, but also the polar domain where Di Mingju was. If Di Mingju really knows her identity as the successor of the Shun musician, what will be the future of the two of them? His heart was filled with extreme uneasiness and fear. Di Mingju, don't you have anything to ask me? Di Mingju straightens up and gently caresses her cheek. Ben Jun naturally has questions, for example. Mu Yang holds her breath, waiting for the man to question her, but she hears him hoarsely say, for example, Yang, when will you be willing to marry Ben Jun? This bastard. Mu Yang rolls her eyes and is about to push him away. But she hears the man's dark and soft voice slowly echoing in her ears. Ben Jun doesn't want to investigate, and also doesn't want to ask. Everything related to Yang, I want to wait for you to tell me personally, Yang. Mu Yang's body suddenly trembled. She straightened her body and looked at the man's handsome face. She suddenly had an urge to tell him everything. Di Mingju, you know Shun. Before she could finish her words, a white shadow suddenly flashes in front of her. A fat rabbit falls from the sky, landing in front of Mu Yan with a bang. The warm conversation between the two was abruptly interrupted. The fat rabbit blinks its mung-bean eyes, looking at Mu Yang, then looking at Di Mingju. When it met Di Mingju's ice-cold eyes, it screeched. He covered his head and fled into the space like a rat. Just at this moment, old Dao's voice came from outside with a report. Mu Yang's confession naturally can't continue. After settling Di Mingju down on the bed to rest, she turns around and leaves. Di Mingju slightly narrows his eyes as he watches Mu Yanli close the door and her departing figure. Just now, he seemed to have felt a powerful energy fluctuation. And that energy wave was emitted from Mu Yang's body. But when he wanted to investigate, the energy fluctuation had already disappeared without a trace. Moreover, was the appearance of that fat rabbit really a coincidence? In the space, the fat rabbit shivered and hid in the grass. Recalling the terrifying pressure emitted by that man, he dug the ground with his front claws, wishing he could bury his entire round body in it. However, before he could finish digging the hole, the fur on the back of his neck suddenly tightened, and his 4 short legs abruptly rose into the air. The fat rabbit let out a howl, and then came face to face with an incomparably handsome face. That person had the appearance of a young man. His eyebrows were like a painting, and he was unparalleled. However, his eyes were incomparably gloomy, as if they were precipitating the vicissitudes of 10,000 years. That's the spirit of the Tianmo Qin, Qi Huang. Chapter 636. This person is also terrible as the man outside. Meeting the fat rabbit's frightened Mung Bin eyes, Qi Huang raises an eyebrow, revealing a charming smile. Don't be afraid, you're the little girl's spiritual pet, and the little girl is my new master after all. Ben Zun won't hurt you. At least, not for the time being. The youth's smile is clearly bright and brilliant, his voice soft and pleasant, but the fat rabbit trembles even more. Qi Huang continues, I already said don't be afraid. Just now, I was just using you to deal with emergencies, to obstruct her from continuing. Otherwise, this little lass will speak out everything without any sense of propriety. How can that be? The Shun musicians are destined to take revenge, to slaughter the 3 realms. How can she easily trust anyone? If I were to be deceived by a scumbag like my previous master, what would I do? Jun Muyan, don't worry. This time, Ben Zun will watch over you and protect you. I will never let you repeat the same mistakes. The expression on the youth's face becomes more and more gentle, but the breath emitted from his body makes the fat rabbit unable to bear it any longer. It howls and suddenly jumps out of the youth's arms, hiding in the grass far away. In the distance, the youth watches its fleeing figure and smiles softly. Then, his figure slowly fades and disappears. In the space, the Tianmo Qin's strings inexplicably move a few times, making a strange sound. Under Muyan's careful treatment, coupled with Jun Shongdaran no longer courting death, the wounds on his body quickly begin to heal. When she finds out that Di Mingju's wounds don't need any treatment, they heal themselves in a short period of time. Muyan knows that she's been deceived. This bastard lecher, in order to take advantage of her, is simply unscrupulous. However, when she saw the wound on the man's body, she completely lost her mind and was easily deceived. She was very calm and wise. Muyan flies into a rage out of humiliation. As a result, in the next few days, Di Mingju doesn't even get on Muyan's bed, he often can't even see her figure. Often, when he goes to look for someone, Muyan's men will use all kinds of reasons to hinder him. Unfortunately, these people call him son-in-law, making him unable to vent his anger. At night, Di Mingju wants to sneak in and hug Muyan to sleep, but finds that Muyan is holding Xiao Bao every night. As soon as he entered, Xiao Bao immediately woke up and looked at him with a pair of clear blue eyes. Only at this moment does Di Mingju know what it means to lift a rock and smash one's own feet. Yingmai witnessed this scene, and she was overjoyed in her heart. Previously, she thought that Miss Jun wouldn't be able to escape Jun Shong's grasp. But from the looks of it now, it was their Jun Shong who had been completely devoured. There was no room for him to turn the tables. The Grand Void Battalion has basically been reorganized. Bai Ichen half knelt in front of Mu Yang, bowed and said, I wonder if we will continue to recruit soldiers and buy horses? As the transfer and dispatch camp of the Ink Camp, the Heavenly Secret Camp and the Longevity Camp, The Grand Void Camp can be said to occupy a very important position. In the Grand Void Battalion, there must be experienced elites who could support the other 3 battalions in battle. They also needed a strategist to command the battle and set up battle formations. More importantly, they had to nurture new reserve talents and send them to the other 3 battalions. That's why Muyin had always said that only Bai Ichen could serve as the commander-in-chief of this battalion. Chapter 637. During this time, Mu Yang was very satisfied with Bai Ichen's work. The only thing she was dissatisfied with was that ever since she joined the Nether Flame Army, Bai Ichen had insisted on calling her Miss. He treated her respectfully with the etiquette of a subordinate, and did not overstep the rules in the slightest, making Mu Yang feel rather helpless. There's no need to recruit more people for now. Muyin says, first train the existing soldiers well. If you need elixirs, you can go directly to the Everlasting Camp to get them. Also, Muyin pauses, how is your body recuperating now? Are you preparing to break through to the innate realm? Bai Ichen was taken aback and raised his head. He sees Mu Yang slowly coming down and grabbing his wrist. Her snow-white jade-like fingers pressed on his pulse, bringing with it a warm and smooth touch, causing Bai Ichen's body to stiffen slightly for a moment. After a moment, Muyin withdraws her hand and smiles. Bai Ichen had stepped into the threshold of the innate stage. Now, it was time to reap the fruits of his labor. With a flick of her wrist, a bottle of pills appeared in her palm. She then handed it to Bai Ichen. This is the limit-breaking pill. Take it before you break through to the innate stage. It will definitely help you overcome your inner demons and advance smoothly. Bai Ichen's eyes suddenly widened. He didn't take the elixir but said, the limit-breaking elixir is too precious. I only need the filter of barrier breaking. He knew about the limit-breaking pill. Dr. Song and the others from the longevity camp had mentioned it before. That was an elixir that very few people in the Nether Flame Army had seen before. It was said that Mu Yang could only refine a few pills every once in a while, and its effects were definitely not something that ordinary pills could compare to. And the ones sold to the Ghost City have never included this kind of elixir. It was obvious how precious it was. Bai Ichen stubbornly refused to take the pill. Mu Yang helplessly grabs his hand and stuffs the porcelain bottle into his palm. For me, you friends and relatives are much more precious than elixirs. Moreover, don't you want your strength to advance by leaps and bounds, and then kill Gong Qianxue with your own hands to take revenge for Lin Sitong? Bai Ichen was startled and subconsciously tightened his grip on the porcelain bottle in his hand. His eyes flashed with struggle and hatred. His calm eyes were now filled with turbulent waves. Yes, he still wanted revenge. His Sitong had died so tragically, he must kill Gong Qianxue with his own hands to comfort Sitong's soul in heaven. But now, not to mention saving Gong Qianxue's sword, even Gong Qianxue herself might not be able to win. How could he have the face to talk about revenge? Uncle Rabbit Lantern. Little Bao hugged the fat rabbit and raised his little head. There are still many pills left. If Uncle Rabbit Lantern doesn't have enough, Little Bao can give you one. Bai Ichen sucked in a deep breath of air. He could feel a warm current surging through his cold chest after Sitong's death. He slowly knelt down and said in a deep voice, this subordinate will never be able to repay Miss and Little Master's kindness in this life. From now on, I pledge my life to follow you. If I go against you, I will be abandoned by everyone. After saying that, without waiting for Xiaobao and Mu Yang's reaction, he turned around and left. Muyin stares blankly. Just as she is about to open her mouth and tell him some important points when advancing, however, she was suddenly hugged from behind. The man's low and displeased voice reaches her ears. Yang Yang, don't you think you're being a little too nice to this Bai Ichen? The room was filled with the smell of vinegar. It was as if it was going to break through the heavens. Chapter 638. This narrow-minded man, it's fine if he says that Chang Yu has improper thoughts about her, but now he's even jealous of Bai Ichen. Xiao Bao immediately echoes, narrow-minded. Di Mingju's face darkens all of a sudden. He picks Xiao Bao up, and somewhat gnashes his teeth as he says, Uncle Rabbit Lantern, you're calling me very affectionately. This little guy has never been this affectionate and good-tempered to him before. What by Ichen? Could it be that he's better than she is to Yang Yang and Xiao Bao? Mu Yang sees the big and small staring at each other, and doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. She's just about to stop them. But she hears the sound of hurried footsteps rushing in from outside the room. Miss, something's wrong. Yu Yang kneels in front of Mu Yang, her face deathly pale. Haitang and Haotian are in trouble. A few days ago, Kai Yang Imperial Palace. The huge palace is filled with a strong medicinal fragrance. A handsome youth lies on the bed, his face deathly pale, his body full of silver needles. The muscles under the needles are trembling incessantly, bean-sized beads of sweat rolling down from his forehead, showing that he's suffering great pain. After a while, a beautiful woman standing next to him pulls out a needle, and carefully inserts 3 more. Because of this small action, the expression on the youth's face on the bed deepens, and he trembles even more violently. Lu Beiyu, who stands at the side, is so nervous that his whole body is stiff. His gaze unblinkingly falls on the youth, and anyone can see the anxiety in his eyes. The youth lying on the bed is the eldest prince of Kaiyang country, and also the crown prince, Luo Nantian. And the one treating him is Feng Haitang. When the last needle is inserted, Luo Nantian's body spasms, and he suddenly straightens up, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Big brother. Lu Beiyu rushes over in shock. Big brother, how are you? Don't scare me. Feng Haitang stands up and slowly exhales, a trace of relief in her eyes. Luo Nantian, who's being held in Lu Beiyu's arms, also slowly opens his eyes. He gives his younger brother a weak smile. Xiao Yu, don't worry, I'm much better now. Big brother, don't try to be brave. If you feel uncomfortable, you must tell me. Feng Haitang snorts coldly. She takes out the pill that Muyan gave her before she left and hands it to Luo Nantian. Are you doubting my medical skills by saying this? After swallowing the medicinal pill, Luo Nantian's complexion visibly improved. Moreover, his eyes, which were originally covered by a white veil, had now retreated quite a bit, revealing pure black pupils. How could Lu Beiyu not know that his elder brother's illness is much better? He is immediately overjoyed. Sister Haitang, you're really amazing. I can suspect anyone, but I can't doubt your medical skills. This compliment, Lu Beiyu is sincere. Feng Haitang had not studied medicine for a long time, so she was not as experienced as Dr. Song and the others. She was even far from Chen Qingfeng's experience in refining medicine. Yet now, her medical skills had surpassed everyone in the longevity camp. Even his alchemy skills had almost caught up to Chen Qingfeng's. Dr. Feng, I've been ill for so many years, even those famous doctors couldn't cure me, yet you cured me so easily. This great kindness, I really don't know how to repay you. The youth on the bed slowly calms down, his gaze attentively fixed on Feng Haitang, his eyes full of gratitude and adoration. Chapter 639. And such feelings can easily transform into deep love. Lu Beiyu sees the affection in his big brother's eyes, and his heart thumps. It can't be. Could it be that big brother likes Haitang Jie? That won't do. Haitang Jie is Boss Yang's. How could she be snatched away? He's about to speak, but he hears Feng Haitang faintly say, all the godly doctors couldn't cure you, because what you're suffering from isn't an illness, but poison. Poison. Hearing that, Lu Beiyu throws all his thoughts to the back of his mind, and exclaims, how could big brother be poisoned? What poison was it? Feng Haitang says, this kind of poison is very rare in the Yanwu continent. Naturally, I wouldn't know, nor would I know how to cure it. But in this world, there is one person who can, and can also refine the antidote. And what I did was to fuse the effects of the antidote with the poison in his body, so that the poison in His Highness's body could be resolved as soon as possible. Yes, Master. Lu Beiyu's face reveals a childlike expression, and he excitedly says, in this world, to be able to cure 100 poisons, to be able to revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones, there's only Master. Feng Haitang smiles and nods. But, how did Big Brother get poisoned? Lu Beiyu frowns. He's the crown prince of Kaiyang country. Who would be so daring as to poison the future emperor of Kaiyang country? Luo Nantian's eyes slightly narrow. revealing an awe-inspiring expression. Who else could it be? Naturally, it's someone who wants to replace me and sit on the throne. Just then, there's the sound of messy footsteps coming from outside the palace. Imperial brother, I heard that third brother has invited a famous doctor for you again. I don't know if there's any improvement in your illness this time. Along with the voice, a man dressed in gorgeous clothes swaggers in. His facial features and appearance are somewhat similar to Liu Beiyu and Luo Nantian, but the ruthlessness and craftiness in his eyes make his entire person seem a bit surly and sinister. Luo Chengfeng, what are you doing here? Liu Beiyu frowns, his eyes filled with disgust. The man who comes in sneers, third brother, I'm still your second brother. You don't even call me imperial brother, isn't that a bit too rude? After saying that, he shifted his gaze to Luo Nantian. Seeing the whites in his eyes receding, her pupils slightly shrank. Big brother, you look good. Could it be that your illness has been cured? I don't know which divine doctor treated me, but this prince would like to have a look. Luo Nantian's face sank as he said, you are not welcome here. Please leave. Men, ask the second prince to leave. However, after this order was given, the entire palace was silent. The guards at the side all lowered their heads guiltily and slowly walked behind Luo Chengfeng. You guys. You actually. Luo Nantian growled in disbelief. Ha 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 ha. Imperial brother, just accept your fate. As the saying goes, a fine bird chooses a fine tree to nest in. These people have long known that there is no future for them to follow you, so they very cleverly chose to join me. Luo Nantian gritted his teeth and said, my illness has been cured. Chapter 640. Do you believe that if news of your death spreads out today, royal father wouldn't even investigate and would directly give me the position of crown prince? Just like back then, I planted the Wu Tu poison on your body, but no one would know. Ha ha ha. So it was you bastard, who poisoned Big Brother. I'm going to kill you. Liu Beiyu roared, suddenly pouncing forward and fiercely punching Luo Chengfeng's face. Luo Chengfeng's cultivation was at the peak of the Earth stage. In his impression, Liu Beiyu was only at the early stages of the Earth stage. That ignorant and incompetent third brother who only knew how to draw was not a threat to him. But he didn't expect that before Luo Chengfeng could react, he would feel a swift and fierce fist wind mixed with boundless profound energy hitting him in the face. With a bang, Luo Chengfeng's entire body flew out, heavily hitting a pillar and letting out a painful groan. Liu Beiyu still wanted to pounce forward, but Luo Chengfeng's underlings had already reacted, blocking Liu Beiyu's attack. Your cultivation, how could you reach the peak of the Earth stage so quickly? Luo Chengfeng crawled up from the ground, looking at Liu Beiyu in disbelief. Liu Beiyu's fists cracked. You deranged bastard, to actually use such a ruthless hand on your own elder brother, I definitely won't let you go. Won't let me go? Ha ha ha, third brother, you're still as stupid as before. Luo Chengfeng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, saying without a care, why won't you let me go? Just based on your meager skills, or based on the people beside you who have pretty good cultivations? But no matter how good they are, they're just a few heaven stages. But do you know how many people are outside this palace right now? The faces of everyone in the room changed. Luo Nantian's voice suddenly rose. Luo Chengfeng, what do you want to do? Could it be that you want to rebel? I'm just taking back what belongs to me. Luo Chengfeng laughed sinisterly. You sickly bastard, you should have died long ago. I didn't do anything to you before because I wanted to see you linger on in pain for a while longer. But now, I don't want to wait any longer. So Luo Nantian, Liu Beiyu, you two pieces of trash obstructing me, obediently go to the netherworld. Liu Beiyu nervously looks at Feng Haitang. Sister Haitang, what should we do? From beginning to end, Feng Haitang's expression hasn't changed in the slightest, and the people from the Everlasting Camp and the Ink Camp behind her are still as calm as ever. The Nether Flame army had seen all kinds of battles. They really didn't care about a mere palace coup. Seeing Feng Haitang's calm expression, Liu Beiyu also calms down. Now, he's also a member of the Ink Camp. Moreover, he's also Muyan's apprentice. How can he be so useless and lose face for his master and little senior? However, Luo Nantien did not know. His face is full of anxiety. Disregarding his body's weakness, he gets down from the bed and stands in front of Lu Beiyu and Feng Haitang. Luo Chengfeng, if you want to kill then kill me. This has nothing to do with Xiao Yu and Dr. Feng. You can kill me and take the title of Crown Prince, but you can't touch them. Luo Chengfeng's eyes turned, suddenly landing on Feng Haitang. So you are the doctor that cured the aconitum poison. I did not think that you would be such a beautiful woman. Chapter 641. Saying that, Luo Chengfeng takes large strides forward, flips Luo Nantien over, and reaches out to touch Feng Haitang's face. Behind Feng Haitang, everyone is expressionless, even looking at Luo Chengfeng with pity in their eyes. Even Lu Beiyu sneered. Only Luo Nantien is so anxious that his eyes are red, actually wanting to throw himself at Luo Chengfeng and perish together with him. However, the next moment, a scene that makes him aghast occurs. Before Luo Chengfeng's hand can touch Feng Haitang's face, it's already pinned down, followed by several cracking sounds. Ah! A pig-like scream rings out in the palace. Luo Nantien looks in shock at Feng Haitang, this delicate beauty, who broke Luo Chengfeng's arm with her bare hands. It wasn't broken in two, but directly broken into 4 or 5 pieces. Feng Haitang pinches his arm, so soft that it can fold and twist at will, and says with a faint sneer, "What did you say you wanted to promise me?" Saying that, she raises her foot again and ruthlessly kicks him under his crotch, directly kicking him out. Another cracking sound is heard, making everyone in the palace feel a chill in their balls. Even the people from the Everlasting Camp and the Ink Camp show expressions of lingering fear, fearing that Commander Feng's foot will kick them in the future. Kill her. Kill this slut for me. Luo Chengfeng awoke from the intense pain and realized that his limbs and right hand were both crippled. He immediately let out a beast-like roar, "Have the army come in immediately and flatten this palace. I want everyone in this house to die without a burial place. Especially this slut. I'll skin her alive and pull out her tendons. I want her to die a horrible death." Luo Chengfeng's confidant immediately blows a whistle. Outside the palace, the rumbling sound of hooves and footsteps comes in a line. And inside the palace, Luo Chengfeng's confidant, a dozen or so heaven stage experts and 2 pre-celestial experts, have already launched a fierce offensive against Feng Haitang and the people from the Ink Camp. Watching his subordinates surround Feng Haitang and the others, Luo Chengfeng shows a twisted smile. But immediately, a heart-wrenching pain comes from his crotch and arm, making his face turn incomparably sinister. "Bitch, just you wait. When you fall into my hands, I'll definitely get someone to play you to death." The uniform footsteps outside the door were getting closer and closer. It was as if they were coming from the gods. The smile on Luo Chengfeng's face became even crazier. "My army has already arrived. Just wait for your deaths. Ha ha ha." Feng Haitang frowned, her expression gloomy. Now that there were more than 10 heaven rankers and 2 innates, it was already very difficult for her to deal with them. If another great army came, the situation would be even more difficult. It seemed like he could only capture the ringleader to capture all his followers. Bang! Feng Haitang's palm collided with the Xiantian old man. A powerful internal force enters her body through her palm, and Feng Haitang's figure flies out like a kite with a broken string. However, in midair, she suddenly changed direction and flew towards Luo Chengfeng. Luo Chengfeng's expression changed drastically. "Protect the emperor, protect the emperor. Quickly cripple this slut for me." As soon as his voice fell, more than 10 Heaven Realm experts guarding Luo Chengfeng immediately formed a saber formation, their profound energy surging. As long as Feng Haitang falls, she's bound to be cut into pieces by the saber formation. And at this time, the enormous army has already poured into the main hall, arriving behind Luo Chengfeng. Luo Chengfeng shows an evil grin, about to speak. Suddenly, there's a flash of light before his eyes. Chapter 642. Feng Haitang only feels a familiar breath hitting her in the face. Her whole body suddenly stiffens, and she slowly raises her head in disbelief. What comes into view is Yang Haotian's face, covered with crisscrossed scars. Even if this face was intact, it wouldn't be considered handsome. Now that it's covered with scars, it's even more fierce and ugly, enough to stop a child from crying at night. But when Feng Haitang sees this face, tears suddenly rush to her eyes. Her entire heart was originally empty, but at this moment, it's filled up in an instant. This man always says that she's suited for a better one, that she's worthy of a better one. But when she needs someone, he's always the first to appear. Moreover, even if there are thousands and thousands of good men in this world, she, Feng Haitang, only loves this imperfect one in front of her. Feng Haitang reaches out, wraps her arms around the man's neck, and buries her face in his neck. Ah, ah. A hoarse cry comes from the man's mouth. He seems to want to say something, but his missing tongue makes him unable to say a single word. But when Feng Haitang raises her head and sees the anxiety and worry on his face, she understands in a flash. That's a telepathic connection. Even if this man keeps running away, she still understands everything. Don't worry, I'm fine. Haotian, why are you here? Yang Haotian doesn't respond to her, but puts her down, and carefully examines her from head to toe. After confirming that Feng Haitang isn't injured, he finally lets out a sigh of relief. That murderous look on his face, and the burning worry in his heart, slowly fades away. Soon after, his line of sight meets Feng Haitang's tender and affectionate eyes, slightly flushed. A woman's unique body fragrance burrows into the tip of his nose, and there's also that soft and delicate body sticking to him. Yang Haotian seems to suddenly realize something, and suddenly pushes Feng Haitang away in a panic. He makes hand gestures in a flurry, but because of his momentary panic, he's simply unable to clearly express his meaning. Feng Haitang is pushed away this time, but she doesn't have the slightest bit of anger or sadness. On the contrary, she bursts out laughing. You thought something happened to me, so you rushed over to save me, right? She looks around, and sees a dense crowd of Ink Camp soldiers pouring in. They've brought at least half of the Ink Camp's people, right? Yang Haotian was usually a very calm person. He would never act impulsively just because of a vague message from Yu Yang. However, because it involved his own safety, he acted in such an exaggerated manner. He lost his cool and his ability to think. Thinking of this, Feng Haitang couldn't stop the joy and sweetness in her heart. Even if Yang Haotian had returned to his usual unapproachable attitude, she would not feel the slightest bit depressed. Who are you people? Where is my army? Only now did Luo Chengfeng realize that the people who rushed in were not the troops he had arranged to ambush outside. Instead, it was this group of strangers he had never seen before. Your army? Guan, who laughed mischievously. With a stomp of his foot, a bloody head rolled in front of Luo Chengfeng. Are you talking about this group of trash? Luo Chengfeng lowered his head to look at the head that rolled over. His eyes abruptly widened and his body began to tremble uncontrollably. Because that head belonged to one of his generals. The army outside was really led by him. Chapter 643. I'm sorry. Guan, who moves closer to Luo Chengfeng, his smile becoming even more devilish. When we just came in, we encountered a group of wastes obstructing us. We were idle and had nothing to do, so we warmed up a bit. Right now, the heads of these wastes are all piled up outside, piling up into a small hill. If you don't believe me, you can go take a look. You're lying, that's an army of 20,000, how could it be, how could it be? Luo Chengfeng shouts himself hoarse, as if this can prove that all of this is just a dream, that it's impossible for him to be defeated so thoroughly. However, after his subordinate rushes out, stumbles back in and says something that shatters all of his delusions. Dead, the second prince, they're all dead. Guan, who opens his mouth, his smile exceptionally simple and honest, but there's a fierce cold light in it. The wastes outside are all dead, now it's your turn. You dare to covet our boss's woman, you tell me, how should you die? Don't. You can't kill me, I'm the second prince of Kaiyang country, the future emperor, you can't kill me. Luo Chengfeng desperately shakes his head and retreats, his mouth screaming hysterically. But the Ink Camp's people have already killed until their eyes are red, how could they care about what he says? In just the blink of an eye, Luo Chengfeng's underlings have already been completely cut down. Right now, he's so scared that his face is deathly pale, He even forgets the pain in his body as he desperately screams for mercy. Big brother, third brother, I'm your relative after all, I beg you to save me. If I die, you won't be able to explain it to Imperial Father, right? Boo-hoo-hoo, big brother, third brother, save me ah. Luo Chengfeng tumbles and crawls in front of Lu Beiyu and Luo Nantian. Right now, there's no longer the arrogance and complacency he had when he first came in. He cuts a sorry figure, snot and tears overflowing, constantly looking back at Lu Beiyu and Luo Nantian. Big brother, you've always been the kindest, you'll spare me, right? You also don't want Imperial Father to think that we're killing each other, right? Luo Chengfeng is well aware of Luo Nantian's character, so he grabs his clothes and keeps begging. Luo Nantian doesn't speak, but Lu Beiyu panics. Big brother, you mustn't be deceived by him. If it weren't for this person, you wouldn't have been so sick for so many years and almost lost your life. Big brother, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. Big brother, believe me. Luo Chengfeng clutched Luo Nantian's clothes tightly as he cried, in the future, I will obediently be a prince. I will definitely not steal your limelight. Believe me. Luo Nantian looked at his face covered in tears and snot, his hand hanging limply, and his lower body covered in blood. He knew that this younger brother of his was already crippled. He had always had a benevolent personality. He had just hated his younger brother to the bone, but now that he saw his brother in such a miserable state, he couldn't bear it anymore. No matter how bad this person was, he was still related to him by blood, and now he knew that he was wrong. Luo Nantian sighed softly and bent down, wanting to help Luo Chengfeng up. Just at this moment, a cruel and cold light flashed in Luo Chengfeng's eyes. He suddenly rose up and grabbed at Luo Nantian's clothes. At some point, a dagger had appeared in his hand, and he quickly pressed it against Luo Nantian's neck. Big brother. Lu Beiyu's complexion changes and he rushes over. Chapter 644. Ha ha ha. Idiot. I just knew that you idiot would fall for it again. Luo Chengfeng glanced at Luo Nantian, who was taken as a hostage, and laughed in an exceptionally carefree manner. Even at this time you still believe in brotherly respect. What a joke. But my good big brother, it is all thanks to your rotten kindness that I was able to escape this time. I, your little brother, will remember this favor. Wait until the day I sit on the throne, I will leave you and third brother a complete corpse. Ha 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 ha. Gah. Luo Chengfeng's voice came to a screeching halt. Soon after, his body began to twitch incessantly. A large amount of blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. Immediately after, with a clang, the saber in his hand fell to the ground and his entire body convulsed as he fell to the ground. Luo Nantian had yet to recover from the shock of being kidnapped by his little brother. Feng Haitang took a few steps forward and coldly glanced at him. Don't you know that many times, being kind to your enemy is being cruel to yourself? As the crown prince of a country, you are actually so soft-hearted. Being reprimanded so mercilessly, Luo Nantian was not the slightest bit angry. Instead, his entire face was filled with shame and gratitude. Feng. Miss Haitang, thank you. You saved me once again. This time, Luo Nantian's gaze towards Feng Haitang was already filled with undisguised affection. Seeing this scene, Yang Haotian felt as if his chest was being pierced by needles, causing his face to turn deathly pale. Aya, boss. Guan, who cried out in a low voice and anxiously whispered into Yang Haotian's ear, oh no, boss, you seem to have a love rival. Furthermore, it's an extremely beautiful gigolo. He's also the crown prince of a country, the future emperor. Boss, you have to act a little faster. Otherwise, sister-in-law will really be snatched away. Yang Haotian did not speak, but his hands unconsciously clenched into fists. At this moment, an irrepressible killing intent and irritation welled up in his heart. He wished that he could throw out Luo Nantian, whose eyes were glued to Haitang. But immediately after, his body fiercely shook and he slowly revealed a bitter smile. What qualifications did he have to feel heartache? What qualifications did he have to be jealous? The one who kept pushing Haitang away, wasn't it him? He kept telling Haitang to find a better man. Wasn't he the one she married? Now, Haitang really found a better man. Shouldn't he be happy for Haitang? Luo Chengfeng was actually poisoned by Feng Haitang just now. At this time, the poison took effect. After experiencing a period of torment worse than death, Luo Chengfeng finally breathed his last. Feng Haitang revolved her profound energy. With a wave of her palm, the poisonous gas that was entangled in Luo Chengfeng's body immediately flew out and returned to her palm. Looking at the dark red mark on his palm, Feng Haitang felt sincere admiration. She was the leader of the Longevity Battalion and the one with the lowest cultivation base among the 4 commanders. In order to balance her fighting ability, Mu Yang specially gave her such a weapon, flowing light damask. This weapon was made by combining the larvae of the golden silkworm with various medicinal ingredients. It could be used as a whip to attack, or it could silently corrode the opponent as a poisonous gas. To Feng Haitang and Feng Haitang, this was the best weapon. In this world, perhaps only the young miss could develop such a unique weapon and was willing to put in the effort to research it for them. Chapter 645. Unconsciously, for her and Yang Haotian, that place has already become a home, a place they want to return to at any time. Unfortunately, the poison in Luo Nanshan's body hasn't been completely removed, so he has to stay for a few more days. Having thoroughly dealt with Luo Chengfeng, Feng Haitang immediately returns to Yang Haotian's side. Haotian, once Luo Nanshan's poison is completely removed, we'll go back to Hellflame Valley. After being gone for so long, I'm starting to miss Yang Haotian expressionlessly looks at her, making a hand gesture. You stay here, I'll go back to Hellflame Valley first. I'll leave half of the people from the ink camp for you. What? Feng Haitang's complexion suddenly changes. You're not going back with me. Yang Haotian's expression still doesn't change, coldly continuing to make hand gestures. I'm not needed here. But there's someone here who needs you. It's good for you to stay here. Feng Haitang stares blankly, following Yang Haotian's line of sight to Luo Nantian. She sees Luo Nantian immediately turn away in panic after meeting her gaze. The youth's fair face shows a bashful blush. As a crown prince, Luo Nantian really is a very kind person. He may not be able to kill decisively, unable to become an eternal emperor, but as long as he has good civil and military officials to assist him, such a benevolent emperor is bound to be a blessing for the people of a country. And the woman who can marry this man will certainly be very happy. Feng Haitang suddenly seems to understand something. She turns her head towards Yang Haotian in disbelief, using a hoarse and trembling voice to say, Yang Haotian, what you're saying right now is the truth. It's hard to suppress the tears in her beautiful eyes, her chest heaving up and down violently. Feng Haitang only feels like she's going to explode from anger. Yang Haotian sees the tears in her eyes, his heart suddenly aching. He can't make the hand gesture he was about to make. Seeing this, Guan Hu promptly comes over, beaming, Miss Feng, don't listen to our boss's nonsense, he's a typical hypocrite. Just now, when he saw you walking so close to the crown prince, his eyes almost popped out. What's more, if you're here, how could our boss be willing to leave? You don't know, when he heard you had an accident, our boss went crazy, he didn't eat or sleep. Ah, boss, why did you hit me? I'm telling the truth. Hearing Guan Hu's words and looking at Yang Haotian's obviously awkward and flustered expression, Feng Haitang feels a little better. Aya, Luo Xiaoyu, we came from afar and fought again. We're exhausted. Hurry up and arrange a place for us and boss to stay. That's right, we're here to protect Miss Feng, so you must arrange for our accommodations to be closer to Miss Feng. As Guan Hu speaks, he winks at Liu Beiyu. Liu Beiyu instantly understands. Don't worry, Brother Hu, I'll let people arrange it. I guarantee that you'll all be satisfied. As he spoke, he glanced at his elder brother and shook his head. Although Big Brother liked Sister Haitang was destined to be their big brothers. Therefore, Big Brother's love affair could only come to an end. 3 days later. Your First Highness, the poison in your body has been completely removed. Feng Haitang takes back the silver needles, slowly saying, next, as long as you use drafts to nurse yourself well, you'll be able to recover. Chapter 646. As the ruler of a country, you cannot lose your vigilance. I hope you will remember this. Luo Nantian sat up from the bed, but he did not check his body. Instead, he stared at Feng Haitang. Miss Haitang, are you leaving? Feng Haitang nodded her head. We were invited by Xiao Yu to treat your illness. Now that you have recovered, it is time for us to return. What if I say that I beg you to stay? Luo Nantian stood up and walked 2 steps towards Feng Haitang. Haitang, I have never felt such strong emotions for a girl like I do for you. If you are willing to stay and be my consort, I promise that I will treat you well for the rest of my life and will never look at another woman again. Haitang, are you willing to stay for me? Feng Haitang was stunned as she stared at the youth in front of her. He stood 2 meters away from her, maintaining the safest and most respectful distance for a girl. There was no forceful aggression or oppression, but his eyes burned with passion. That pair of eyes that had regained their black color after being detoxified were so clear, without any impurities. It was easy to believe that his feelings were real, without a trace of lies. No one could belittle such a sincere feeling, and no one would not be moved. But after being moved, Feng Haitang quickly recovered and shook her head. Sorry, I cannot promise you. Because I already have someone I like. The light in Luo Nantian's eyes dimmed. He smiled bitterly and said softly, actually, I already knew that this would be the outcome. But this is the first time I have met a girl I like. If I don't try, I will not be satisfied. Haitang, do you like that man called Yang Haotian? Feng Haitang blushed, revealing a rare shyness of a young girl, but she still nodded. He is my fiancé. Although he doesn't want to admit it, in my heart, he is the only man I want to marry in this life. He is really blessed. Luo Nantian muttered. He wanted to smile, but he could not hide the sadness on his face. Feng Haitang looked at the sadness in his beautiful eyes and couldn't bear it. She said softly, Your Highness, thank you for your love. But in fact, your feelings for me might just be because I saved you from the clutches of the disease. It was a kind of instantaneous empathy and impulse. But you are a good person. I believe that you will definitely find your other half. Luo Nantian did not say anything. Instead, he smiled and nodded. The two of them faced each other in silence. At this moment, a figure passed by the window. Luo Nantian suddenly stepped forward and hugged Feng Haitang. Startled, Feng Haitang was about to push him away when she heard Luo Nantian say, Don't move. The person who just walked by is your fiancé. Feng Haitang's long eyelashes trembled. She heard Luo Nantian continue, I can tell that your fiancé likes you but is unwilling to accept you. Haitang, why don't we put on a show to provoke him? If he really has feelings for you, then I wish the two of you a happy life together. But if he still refuses to come to his senses, then he doesn't deserve to have you. When that time comes, I hope that you can give me a chance. Chapter 647. Then, she feels the temperature in the room suddenly drop, as if the air is suppressing a cold killing intent, ready to explode at any time. Feng Haitang quivers, pushes Luo Nantian away and rushes out. In the distance, she sees Yang Haotian's back quickly leaving. That figure is indistinct, almost disappearing, but it's filled with endless despair and loneliness. Feng Haitang can't bear it anymore. She suddenly steps forward and chases after him like lightning. Luo Nantian looks at Feng Haitang's disappearing figure and slowly exhales, revealing a bitter smile. Big brother, I already told you, the one Haitang Jie likes is our boss. Lu Beiyu pops out of nowhere and pats Luo Nantian's shoulder, comforting him, don't think about it anymore. Give up as soon as possible, lest you get hurt deeper. Luo Nantian retracts his gaze and looks at Lu Beiyu, rubbing his head. Xiao Yu has grown up. That naughty and mischievous boy now knows how to teach big brother a lesson. Hee. I got a good master, of course I'll make progress. Lu Beiyu says shamelessly, Big brother, wait until I return from master, then I'll be your general. In the future, I'll help you protect your country. And I believe that Big brother's future empress will be the best woman in the world. Big brother, you'll be in love with her and live happily ever after. The dim light in Luo Nantian's eyes gradually brightens and he slowly nods. Feng Haitang chases for a long time but still can't catch up to Yang Haotian. Yang Haotian's cultivation is higher than hers. Running at full speed, it's impossible for her to catch up. Finally, Feng Haitang stops and yells, "Yang Haotian, stop for me." The figure in front of her slowly stops. Feng Haitang jumps in front of him and looks up at him. The man's face is expressionless, as if he doesn't care about what he just saw. Feng Haitang grits her teeth. What if he really doesn't care? Why did he release such a strong killing intent? Why did he run away? Yang Haotian, tell me, what did you just see? Don't you have anything to say to me? Yang Haotian looked down at the girl's slightly blushing beautiful face. His eyes flashed, and after a long while, he gestured with his hands. "Congratulations, you will soon be Kaiyang country's princess." Feng Haitang's body shook violently, and her eyes reddened again. "You actually congratulated me? Don't you have anything else to say besides congratulations?" Yang Haotian's hands trembled. Then, he gestured again. "He's a good man. He won't let you down. He won't let me down. So you want to push me to someone else? Then have you ever asked me what I want?" Feng Haitang could no longer hold back her tears as they rolled down her cheeks. "Yang Haotian, you bastard." Yang Haotian reached out to touch her face and gently wiped her tears. The heartache and despair in his eyes made people realize how deep the feelings hidden in the man's heart were. But immediately, he seemed to realize something. He hurriedly withdrew his hand and wanted to leave. But how could Feng Haitang let him escape? She grabbed his hand and suddenly leaned forward to bite his lips. Yang Haotian groaned in pain. Chapter 648. If you say no, I will go back and accept Luo Nantian right now. From now on, I'll be the princess of Kaiyang country, and you'll be the commander of the ink camp. We'll never meet again in life or death. If. Feng Haitang's voice was choked with shyness and determination. If you still like me a little, then hug me, kiss me, and tell me that you love me. Yang Haotian's body stiffened, his muscles twitching slightly. His eyes were scarlet red, and all that remained in his mind was Feng Haitang's captivating red lips and her fragrant breath. His mind buzzed, and everything faded from his consciousness, leaving only the deep love and desire buried in the bottom of his heart. Feng Haitang saw that he did not respond for a long time and thought that he had finally rejected her. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she slowly let go of Yang Haotian's hand. Just as she was about to leave, her waist was suddenly grabbed by someone, and her red lips were sealed by a blazing hot breath. Feng Haitang suddenly opened her eyes wide, and then ecstasy surged in her heart. Hao Tian was kissing her. Hao Tian took the initiative to kiss her. Did this mean that Hao Tian was finally willing to accept her and be with her? Feng Haitang was wild with joy, and then completely immersed in the man's overbearing and passionate kiss. After a long while, Yang Haotian finally let go of Feng Haitang's red and swollen lips. Feng Haitang nestled in his arms, tightly hugging his thin waist, her face filled with joy and sweetness. However, the voice that came out of her mouth was low and seductive. "Haotian, are you finally willing to accept me? I'm so happy. I think I'm the happiest woman in the world." A trace of annoyance and pain flashed across Yang Haotian's face. What was wrong with him? He clearly knew that he was not worthy of Haitang. He had clearly said that he would stay far away from her. Why couldn't he control himself? When he saw Luo Nantian carrying Haitang, he could not control the killing intent in his body. When he held Haitang and kissed her little mouth, he felt so painful and sweet. He wished that time would stop at that moment and never move forward. Didn't he love Haitang? How could he not love her? In this world, the person he loved the most was this silly woman, but he couldn't. He was a piece of trash, an ugly monster who didn't even have a tongue and couldn't speak. How could he be worthy of Haitang? If she were to be with him, how could Haitang's parents agree? Others would also laugh at Haitang, saying that she had married an ugly piece of trash. How could he allow the girl he loved to be hurt like that? Yang Haotian's heart felt like it was being torn apart and burned. He wanted to push Haitang away as decisively as before, but when he saw the happy smile on her face, it was as if his hands were filled with lead, unable to move. "Boss! Boss!" Guan Hu's shout can be heard from afar. "Oh no, the The old emperor of Kaiyang country sent troops to investigate the cause of Luo Chengfeng's death. 100,000 troops and horses came. I didn't see anything, boss, Miss Feng, I was wrong. You guys continue. I'll scram immediately. Come back. Feng Haitang shouted, blushing, you. What did you just say? Where are they now? Chapter 649. But the old emperor sent a pretty boy over, saying that he's investigating the cause of Luo Chengfeng's death. If he finds out that it was Luo Nantian and Xiao Yu who rebelled, then the 100,000 troops will come. Feng Haitang frowned. 100,000 troops, even if it's a low-level martial artist, it's still very difficult to deal with. Let's go take a look, Haotian. Saying so, she naturally held Yang Haotian's hand. Yang Haotian struggled, wanting to break free, but Feng Haitang held him even tighter. Guan Hu on the side let out a wretched laugh. This made Yang Haotian's face burn. If not for his dark skin, he would have been embarrassed. But for some reason, there was an indescribable sweetness in his heart. He couldn't bear to let go of this soft little hand that was holding him. It's best not to let go for the rest of his life. When Feng Haitang and Yang Haotian rushed back to Luo Nantian's palace, the Scarlet Flame's emperor's envoy had already arrived. Looking from afar, it was a young man dressed in white with a tall and straight figure. When Feng Haitang saw this young man's back, she felt that he was somewhat familiar. When he turned his head and saw his face, Feng Haitang's eyes widened in shock. Senior apprentice brother? Hearing Feng Haitang's voice, the young man turned around and met her gaze. The young man had a rather outstanding appearance. Although not as handsome as Luo Nantian, he was dressed in white with a folding fan in his hand. His every movement had a carefree and unrestrained attitude. However, after seeing Feng Haitang, his pupils suddenly shrank, as if he saw something unbelievable. Then, the shock on his face suddenly turned into ecstasy. He rushed out like an arrow and hugged Feng Haitang. Haitang, is it really you? Why are you here? Do you know how long I, uncle, auntie, and fellow apprentice brothers have been looking for you? Feng Haitang wasn't used to having intimate physical contact with men other than Yang Haotian. Just as she was about to push him away, she heard the young man's words and became slightly dazed. Father, mother, and master, how are they? Feng Haitang's voice was slightly hoarse, full of guilt. When the Yang family declined, her parents broke off the engagement with Yang Haotian on her behalf. Although she was unwilling, she knew that her parents were afraid that she would suffer with Yang Haotian. She stayed true to her feelings, but failed her parents. Her parents only had her as their daughter. If they knew that she had secretly run away, they would probably be very sad and anxious, right? The young man let go of her and looked at her without blinking. After a while, he said, "Of course, uncle and auntie are very worried about you. For the past year, they have been looking for you everywhere. They are afraid that you will suffer. The last time I went to your house, they saw that auntie was sick." What? Feng Haitang's expression changed. Mother is sick. How is her illness? Is it serious? Senior brother Fang, tell me quickly. However, the young man did not answer her. Instead, he turned around slightly and landed on her and Yang Haotian's intertwined hands. His eyes narrowed. Haitang, who is this? Aren't you going to introduce him to me first? Although Feng Haitang was burning with anxiety, she still blushed when she heard the young man's question. But when Yang Haotian was about to withdraw his hand, she forcefully held it. Chapter 650. Hearing this, Fang Yicheng's eyes flashed and his gaze swept across Yang Haotian's scarred face. The corners of his mouth curled into a mysterious smile. Then, he reached out to Yang Haotian. I've heard of you. You're the young master of the Yang family who was engaged to Haitang at a young age, right? However, I remember that the Yang family seemed to have met with misfortune. I thought that brother Yang had already passed away. I didn't expect that he actually survived. I wonder how brother Yang managed to escape this calamity. How did you spend this time? Yang Haotian expressionlessly looked at his outstretched hand, but did not shake it. Instead, He silently pulled back the hand Haitang was holding. Feng Haitang was anxious about her mother's illness and quickly asked, "Senior brother, how is my mother's illness?" "Don't worry." Fang Yicheng smiled slightly and reached out to touch Feng Haitang's hair. His actions and demeanor were unusually intimate and natural. "Your mother is just an ordinary illness caused by worry. As long as you go back and see you, I believe she will recover immediately." Feng Haitang heaved a sigh of relief. She turned to look at Yang Haotian and said, "Haotian, let's not return to Hellflame Valley first. Can you accompany me home to see my father and mother? I am very worried about my mother's illness. Fortunately, I have learned medicine from Miss, and I believe that mother's illness can be cured." Yang Haotian's eyes were filled with sorrow and inferiority. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he swallowed his words when he saw Feng Haitang's expectant gaze. Fang Yicheng narrowed his eyes when he saw this scene. His expression was unfathomable. At night, Yang Haotian sat quietly in front of the candle, watching the dancing flame without saying a word. At this moment, the door creaked and was slowly pushed open. Yang Haotian looked up and saw Fang Yicheng walking in slowly with a fan in his hand. Meeting Yang Haotian's gaze, Fang Yicheng revealed a mysterious smile. "Brother Yang, you don't seem surprised at all that I would come looking for you." Yang Haotian looked at him expressionlessly and said nothing. Fang Yicheng did not feel uncomfortable at all. He slowly closed the door and sat opposite him. "Brother Yang, why aren't you saying anything? Are you disdainful of talking to me? Or, you can't speak?" Yang Haotian pursed his lips, his gaze as sharp as a knife. "Sigh. I didn't expect Brother Yang to really be unable to speak." Fang Yicheng closed the fan in his hand and said regretfully, "I thought the rumors I heard were just rumors. I didn't expect it to be true. I heard that when the Yang family declined, Brother Yang didn't die. Instead, his cultivation was crippled, his tongue was cut off, and he was sold to the Ghost City's beast-fighting Colosseum to become a slave for people to play with." As Fang Yicheng spoke, he shook his head. Brother Yang was originally a proud son of heaven. He had awe-inspiring talent, a huge family background, and a beautiful and outstanding fiancée like Haitang. It was really enviable. Who would have thought that he would actually fall to the point where he couldn't even speak? If I were Brother Yang, I definitely wouldn't be able to endure such a fall. I'd rather die than live an ignoble life and become someone else's plaything. Yang Haotian clenched his fists tightly by his side. After a long while, he picked up the pen and wrote a few words on the paper. "What are you trying to say?" Chapter 651. Haitang is the pearl of the Feng clan, our most cherished junior sister. Her future is destined to be a meteoric success that everyone envies. But what can you bring her? If she goes out with you, junior sister will only be laughed at by others, and uncle and aunt Feng will not be able to lift their heads. Moreover, Haitang has many talents, but what about you? You don't even know how to speak. When you marry her, how are you going to accompany her? Let's say something more unpleasant. Although you were not born with this disability, your body is still damaged. Can you guarantee that the children you give birth to in the future will not have the same disability as you? When that time comes, how sad and regretful will junior sister Haitang be? Yang Haotian only felt a roar in his head, and his face turned pale in an instant. Fang Yicheng, on the other hand, was very satisfied with the effect he had created. The expression in his eyes became more and more arrogant and determined. "I know that junior sister must be dead set on you now. She is infatuated with you. Haitang, this silly girl, has always been like this. She is especially loyal to her friends. But you better not misunderstand. That does not mean that she really likes you. It is only because of the previous engagement and her sympathy for you that she feels sorry for you and is too embarrassed to let go of you. But sympathy and pity, there is no real relationship between the two of you. One day, it will be used up. When she finds out that she made the wrong choice, I'm afraid she will be in so much pain that she will wish she was dead. Can you bear to see Haitang become like that in the future?" Fang Yicheng's last sentence was like a giant hammer that ruthlessly smashed into Yang Haotian's heart. Sympathy and pity. Yes, What he was most afraid of was that Haitang's stubbornness to be with him was not because she loved him, but because she pitied him. When one day, Haitang found out that she had made a mistake in her feelings and regretted it, what should he do? If there was such a future, he would rather not have a beginning and not have any hope. Because without hope, there would be no disappointment, and there would be no despair. And without him, Haitang would accept Fang Yicheng, Luo Nantian, and a man who was 10,000 times better than him. She would definitely be happier for the rest of her life than marrying a cripple like him. Yang Haotian slowly closed his eyes. He felt as if there was something hot and wet surging in his eyes. But when he touched the corners of his eyes, everything was so dry. Just like his dried up and withered life from then on. At this moment, Fang Yicheng knew that he had achieved his goal. He stood up with a smile and used the handle of his fan to gently knock on the table. He leisurely said, "Tomorrow, junior sister Haitang and I will be returning to the Feng clan. I hope you can make things clear with Haitang as soon as possible and make her give up. Of course, I don't think Brother Yang would be so thick-skinned as to follow us back to the Feng clan, right? After all, you know very well that Uncle and Aunt Feng will never welcome you." After that, Fang Yicheng left with a smile. Just like that, Yang Haotian sat in front of the candlelight in a deathly stillness, his entire body ice-cold, until dawn. Early the next morning, Feng Haitang packed her luggage and hurried to Yang Haotian's room. Seeing Yang Haotian sitting in front of the extinguished candle, Feng Haitang was stunned. "Haotian, why are you still sitting here? Have you packed up? We're about to set off for Tianfu City. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.